In the quiet town of Willow Creek, Texas, where the sun baked the flat lands and the military base loomed on the horizon like a watchful giant, Sarah Thompson stepped off the bus at the local airport. She was 45 now, her once sharp features softened by years of service, but her eyes still held the steady gaze of someone who had seen too much. Sarah had grown up here in a modest house on Elm Street, where her father had worked as a mechanic and her mother as a schoolteacher. The town hadn't changed much. Same old diner serving greasy burgers, same flags waving proudly outside the base. But Sarah had. She was a retired Navy SEAL, one of the first women to earn her place in that elite world. Her gold Trident pin, a symbol of her hard-won qualification, was tucked safely under her simple blouse, a quiet reminder of battles fought and won. Sarah was heading to Washington, D.C. for a ceremony honoring veterans. It wasn't her first time traveling, but this trip felt different. She carried a small duffel bag worn from deployments and a first-class ticket she'd earned through her military benefits. The airport was small, more like a regional hub, but it buzzed with travelers, families on vacation, businessmen in suits, and a group of young executives from a nearby tech company. Sarah moved through security with ease, her movements efficient, no fuss. She didn't draw attention, she never did. Dressed in jeans, a plain shirt, and comfortable boots, she looked like any other middle-aged woman from a small town. At the check-in counter, things took a turn. The airline agent, a young man named Kyle with a smug grin, glanced at her ticket and then at her. "First class, really?" he said, chuckling to himself. Behind him, two other agents overheard and smirked. Sarah raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She had faced worse, sandstorms in the desert, gunfire in the night. A little sarcasm didn't faze her. "Ma'am, there's been an overbooking," Kyle continued, his tone dripping with false apology. "We're going to have to move you to economy. It's just a short flight, no big deal." Sarah knew it was a lie. She could see the empty first-class seats listed on his screen. But she stayed calm. "That's fine," she replied evenly. "As long as I get there." Kyle leaned over to his colleague, whispering loud enough for her to hear, "Can you believe it? She thinks she's special. Probably bought the ticket by mistake." They laughed, and one of them added, "Yeah, dump her in the back with the rest of the peasants. It'll be a joke she'll remember." Sarah felt a flicker of anger, but she pushed it down. She had learned long ago to pick her battles. Growing up in Willow Creek, she was the girl who joined the Navy right out of high school against her parents' wishes. "It's a man's world," her father had said, worried for her, but Sarah proved him wrong. She trained harder, pushed further, and became a SEAL. The gold Trident wasn't just a pin. It was proof of her strength, her sacrifices, the friends lost, the nights without sleep, the wounds that still ached on rainy days. As she boarded the plane, the gate agent gave her a pitying look. "Sorry about the mix-up," she said, but her eyes said otherwise. Sarah nodded and found her seat in economy, squeezed between a snoring man and a fussy child. The young executives from earlier were in first class, laughing loudly as they settled in with champagne. One of them spotted her and waved mockingly. "Enjoy the ride back there?" he called out. The passengers around chuckled, and Sarah felt the weight of their stares. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. This was nothing compared to what she'd endured. But inside, it stung. After 20 years of service protecting her country, she was reduced to a punchline. She thought of her late husband, also a veteran, who had died in action 5 years ago. He would have stood up for her, but she was alone now. Her daughter, Emily, was back home, proud of her mom, but worried about her traveling alone. "Be safe, Mom," Emily had said, hugging her tight. Sarah touched the gold Trident under her shirt, a habit for comfort. It was her anchor. As the plane taxied down the runway, Sarah reflected on her life. The small town had always underestimated her. In school, boys teased her for being too tough. In the Navy, superiors doubted her until she outlasted them all. Now this, but she wouldn't break. The flight attendant, a kind-faced woman named Maria, passed by with drinks. "Anything for you, ma'am?" she asked. Sarah smiled faintly. "Just water, please," Maria nodded, sensing something in Sarah's quiet demeanor. Little did anyone know this flight would change everything. As the plane lifted off, Sarah settled in, unaware that her pin would soon shine a light on the truth. The mockery was just the beginning, a setup for the respect she had earned but rarely received. And in the hours ahead, justice would find its way, one revelation at a time. The hum of the engines filled the cabin as the plane climbed into the sky, leaving Willow Creek far below. Sarah stared out the tiny window, watching the patchwork of fields fade into clouds. Economy class was cramped, her knees pressed against the seat in front. The snoring man beside her shifted, invading her space, but she didn't complain. Complaining wasn't her way. Instead, she let her mind wander back to the days that shaped her, the sacrifices that made her who she was. It started in boot camp, where the drill instructors pushed her to her limits. "Thompson, you think you're tough?" one had yelled, his face inches from hers. She proved it day after day, earning her spot in SEAL training. The gold Trident came after Hell Week, a grueling test of endurance that broke most men. Sarah remembered the cold water, the endless runs, the doubt in her teammates' eyes. But she pushed through for her country, for her family. When she pinned that gold emblem on her uniform, it was more than an award. It was validation. Back on the plane, the young executive's laughter drifted from first class, piercing the curtain like arrows. One of them, a slick-haired man named Brad, had been the loudest at the gate. He was traveling with his buddies for a conference, flaunting their success. Sarah overheard them earlier, bragging about their bonuses and luxury lives. To them, she was invisible, an older woman in cheap clothes, unworthy of first class. "Did you see her face?" Brad said, loud enough for economy to hear. "Priceless. Bet she's never flown fancy before." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. She had faced real enemies, insurgents in Afghanistan, where she led missions that saved lives. One night under fire, she carried a wounded comrade 2 miles to safety. Her shoulder still bore the scar from a bullet graze. Those moments built her emotional armor. But here, in this metal tube hurtling through the air, the injustice gnawed at her. Why did people like Brad get the easy path while she fought for every inch? A flight attendant, Tom, a burly man with a military haircut, walked the aisle. He noticed Sarah's discomfort but said nothing yet. Maria, the kind one, returned with her water. "Here you go," she said softly. "You look like you've had a long day." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Just heading to DC for work," Maria smiled. "Veteran?" Sarah hesitated, then said, "Yes, ma'am, Navy." Maria's eyes lit up. "My brother served, thank you." It was a small kindness, but it warmed Sarah. As the flight continued, turbulence hit, shaking the plane. The child next to her cried, and Sarah gently comforted him with a story about brave sailors. His mother thanked her, but the mockery didn't stop. Brad stood up, peering back through the curtain. "Hey, economy folks, enjoying the show?" he joked, holding up his champagne. His friends laughed. Sarah felt eyes on her again, the humiliation building. She thought of her daughter Emily, now 20, studying nursing. Emily idolized her mom, but Sarah worried about the world her girl would face. A world that still underestimated women like them. Flashbacks flooded her mind. In Iraq, she lost her best friend, Mike, to an IED. She held him as he faded, promising to carry on. That promise kept her going through the pain, the PTSD that sometimes woke her at night. Retiring to Willow Creek was supposed to be peaceful, but even there, folks whispered. "Sarah's too tough for her own good," they'd say. She volunteered at the base, training young recruits, sharing her wisdom, but respect was hard-won. Mid-flight, Sarah adjusted her shirt, and the gold Trident pin caught the light briefly. Tom, the attendant, passed by and froze. He was ex-Army, and he recognized it instantly, the SEAL insignia, gold for those who had proven themselves in combat. His eyes widened, but he said nothing yet, continuing his duties. Sarah didn't notice. She was lost in thought, steeling herself against the emotional storm. The plane leveled out, and announcements came for meal service. In economy, it was pretzels, in first, gourmet snacks. Brad complained loudly about his, drawing more laughs. Sarah ate quietly, her strength shining through her calm. She wasn't broken, she was resilient. But deep down, she longed for the day when her sacrifices were seen, not mocked. As the flight neared its midpoint, Tom whispered to Maria. "That woman in 23B, she's wearing a gold Trident, she's a SEAL." Maria gasped. The crew began to murmur. Little did Sarah know the tide was turning. The injustice of the downgrade, the jokes, it was all building to a moment of truth, and when it came, it would shake the cabin. The plane droned on, cutting through the evening sky toward DC. Sarah shifted in her seat, her back aching from the tight space. The snoring man had woken up and was now chatting with the child's mother, leaving Sarah in relative peace. But the emotional weight lingered. She pulled out a photo from her wallet, her with Emily and her late husband, Jack, at a base picnic. Jack's smile reminded her of better days before the war took him. "You're the strongest person I know," he'd say. She held on to that. Up front, the first-class passengers were settling in, movies playing on their screens. Brad and his group were tipsy now, their voices carrying. "This is the life," Brad boasted. "Not like those suckers in the back." Sarah heard it all, but she focused on her breathing, a technique from training. Injustice like this was petty compared to what she'd seen, villages torn apart, lives lost, yet it hurt, chipping at her hard-earned pride. Tom, the flight attendant, couldn't shake what he'd seen. During a break in the galley, he pulled Maria aside. "Confirm it for me," he said. "Row 23, seat B, gold Trident pin." Maria peeked discreetly. "You're right, how did we miss that?" Tom nodded. "She's elite, we need to do something." They alerted the captain, a veteran himself, over the intercom. "Captain Reynolds here," he responded. If she's a SEAL, treat her like royalty. That's an order. The crew snapped into action quietly. Maria approached Sarah first. "Ma'am, could I see your boarding pass?" Sarah handed it over, puzzled. Maria examined it, then smiled. "There's been a mistake. Please come with me." Sarah stood, grabbing her bag, ignoring the curious stares. As she walked toward the front, Brad noticed. "Hey, where's she going? Lost?" His friends snickered. In the galley out of sight, Tom saluted her lightly. "Ma'am, we saw your pin, gold Trident Navy SEAL." Sarah nodded modestly. "Retired." The crew's faces lit up with respect. Captain Reynolds emerged from the cockpit. "It's an honor," he said, shaking her hand. "My son wants to be a SEAL. What you did. Thank you." Sarah felt a warmth she hadn't in years. "Just doing my duty," she replied. They upgraded her on the spot, moving a less deserving passenger, ironically one of Brad's quieter friends, to economy. Sarah settled into first class, the seat spacious, the service immediate. Champagne was offered, but she chose coffee. The crew shared stories, treating her like family. Maria confided, "My brother came home broken. People like you saved him." But the emotional beat hit when Brad realized what happened. He leaned over, seeing Sarah. "Wait, her? In first class now?" His face twisted in confusion. The crew ignored him, focusing on Sarah. She could feel the shift, the mockery turning to whispers of curiosity. It was a small victory, but it built her up, reminding her of her worth. Flashbacks returned, earning the Trident the ceremony where her team cheered. "You're one of us," her commander said, but retirement brought isolation. In Willow Creek, she helped at the VA counseling vets. One young soldier, Tim, had thanked her for saving his spirit. "You show us strength," he said. Now on this plane, that strength was recognized. As the flight continued, Sarah shared a bit of her story with the crew, the missions, the losses. They listened, moved. Tom teared up. "We had no idea," Sarah smiled. "Most don't." The injustice of the downgrade faded, replaced by redemption's glow. But the story wasn't over. Brad's group stewed, their egos bruised. The plane began its descent, lights of DC twinkling below. Sarah felt renewed, her emotional walls cracking just enough to let in hope. Little did she know the twist was coming, a confrontation that would expose the truth and earn her the respect she deserved. With the upgrade, Sarah's world shifted. The first-class seat enveloped her like a hug, a far cry from the cramped economy row. She sipped her coffee, watching the clouds part. The crew checked on her often, their respect evident in every word. "Anything else, ma'am?" Maria asked. Sarah shook her head. "This is more than enough." Inside, emotions swirled, gratitude mixed with the sting of earlier mockery. She had always been the strong one, the rock for her team, her family. But moments like this reminded her she deserved kindness too. Brad and his friends weren't happy. From their seats, they muttered. "How did she get up here?" Brad hissed. "We paid for this." One of them flagged Tom. "Excuse me, why is she here? We were promised exclusivity." Tom smiled politely. "Airline policy for honored guests." Brad's face reddened. "Honored? She's just some lady from nowhere." The crew walked away, but the tension built. Sarah overheard, but she stayed composed. Her journey had taught her patience. In Somalia, she waited hours in ambush, heart pounding for the right moment. This was similar, wait and see. She thought of her sacrifices, missing Emily's birthdays for deployments, burying Jack alone. Those built her resilience. Now in civilian life, she channeled it into helping others. Back in Willow Creek, she ran a support group for military widows. "You're not alone," she'd tell them, drawing from her pain. As the flight neared landing, Captain Reynolds made an announcement. "Folks, we have a special passenger today, a retired Navy SEAL. Let's give her a round of applause." The cabin erupted in claps, even from economy. Sarah blushed, waving it off, but Brad crossed his arms, refusing. His group followed suit after he approached Sarah. "So you're a SEAL? Prove it." Sarah met his gaze calmly. "I don't need to prove anything to you." Brad laughed. "Come on, lady, women SEALs, that's a joke." His words hit like a slap, underestimating her again. Sarah felt anger rise, but she channeled it. "I've earned my place," she said firmly, "more than you'll ever know." The crew intervened, escorting Brad back. Maria whispered to Sarah, "Ignore him, he's nothing compared to you." The emotional depth grew as Sarah reflected on her path to justice. In the Navy, she faced doubters, male colleagues who tested her extra hard. She outshone them, earning promotions. The gold Trident was her triumph. Now this flight mirrored that, starting with insult, building to respect. But redemption needed closure. Passengers began chatting with her, sharing admiration. An older man, a Vietnam vet, saluted. "Proud of you, sister." It healed old wounds. Sarah thought of her mother who passed last year, always worried. "Come home safe," she'd say. Sarah did, but changed. As the plane touched down, the crew promised to report the gate agents. That downgrade was wrong, Tom said. Sarah nodded, feeling empowered. But the twist loomed. Brad's arrogance would lead to his downfall, exposing the truth in a way no one expected. The plane taxied to the gate at Reagan National Airport, the DC skyline glowing under the night lights. Sarah gathered her things, the gold trident now visible on her collar, pinned proudly. The crew lined up to thank her, Captain Reynolds last. "Safe travels, hero," he said. Sarah smiled. "Thank you all." It was a far cry from the mockery at takeoff. As passengers deplaned, Brad pushed past, muttering, "This is ridiculous." His group followed, egos deflated. Sarah walked steadily, head high. At baggage claim, fate intervened. A group of active duty SEALs there for the same ceremony spotted her pin. "Ma'am, fellow Trident here," one called. They surrounded her, saluting, sharing stories. Passengers watched, including Brad's group. Brad sneered from afar. "Fake," he said loudly, but a SEAL overheard. "You doubting a sister in arms?" They confronted him. Brad backpedaled, but his earlier jokes at the airport had been recorded by a passenger's phone, viral potential. The SEALs demanded an apology. Brad stammered, "I didn't know." Sarah stepped in gracefully. "It's okay, learn from it." The twist came when airport security arrived, alerted by the crew's report. The gate agents, Kyle and his pals, were questioned. Turns out, the overbooking was a prank they pulled often on unimportant folks. Exposed, they faced suspension. Brad's company, hearing of his behavior via social media buzz, reprimanded him publicly. Sarah arrived at the ceremony the next day, honored with a medal for her service. News outlets picked up the story. SEAL hero humiliated, then honored. It went viral, exposing the truth about everyday injustices. Back in Willow Creek, Emily beamed. "Mom, you're amazing." Sarah returned home stronger, her journey complete. The mockery turned to respect, her sacrifices redeemed. In the end, the gold trident wasn't just a pin, it was her shield, proving that true strength always wins.